Hello, and welcome to the BYU Family History Library webinar. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Olivia Tuller, and I'll be your host for this webinar. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You are welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments, insights, and questions. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Our next webinar is on September 22nd with Laura Leffler. She will be giving a presentation entitled Best Record Types to Track Down Your Southern Ancestors. If you would like to access a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Maureen Brady, who will be giving a presentation on the Family History Research Circle, the Internet, FamilySearch Family History Centers, libraries, and on-site research. Before we begin, here is a little bit about Maureen. Maureen Brady, a former school librarian and computer educator, has over 35 years' experience with family history research. She has traced her Scottish roots back to the end of the 17th century and beyond, and has also pursued Chicago and the Midwest, the Trans-Allegheny US, Quebec, Irish, and Swedish research. Maureen has made numerous presentations to Illinois and Wisconsin genealogical societies, libraries, conferences, and workshops, including presenting at the 2002 National Genealogical Society Conference in the States and the 2016, 2017, and 2018 Central Florida Family History Conference. She is a member of the Genealogical Speakers Guild, as well as a life member of the Aberdeen and Northeast Scotland Family History Society, the Chicago Genealogical Society, the Ohio Genealogy Society, and the McHenry County, Illinois Genealogical Society. She is also active in the British Interest Group of Wisconsin and Illinois, the Chicago Scots Genealogical Group, and the Lake County, Illinois Genealogical Society. If Maureen is ready, we'll turn the time over to her.
So what I wanted to do with this one is because I work in a family history center, I staff a couple of them here in the Chicago area a couple of days a week. I have a lot of patrons who come in who say to me, well, everything's on the internet. I only need to use the internet and so forth. And there cannot be anything farther from the truth. So I developed this particular presentation to kind of give you an idea of, it's not exactly a process, but some of the things you need to consider when you are doing research on your family and when you are planning research trips or research goals to a library or something like that. So first of all, we have the circle, and I call it the circle in quotes because it really looks more like this. You start at one point and then you go across and then you go across and then you back up and go backwards again. And it really is repetitive and back and forth and back and forth. But the circle is a good image, and so that's what I decided to use. Also, I hear this a lot, as I said, everything is on the internet. And all I can say is not by a long shot is everything on the internet. Yes, there is more and more every day and every week, but it is still nowhere near everything that is available for us to research for our family histories. And I'm going to do a little bit of background work here because to do really good research, whether you're doing it on the internet or not, whether you're going to a library or not, you really need to lay good groundwork. Even if all you're doing is coming to the Family History Center, you need to have the groundwork so that when questions are asked, or if somebody says, well, do you have that census, you'll know whether or not you have it. So the first thing you should think about is how are you going to record what you know about the family? You can certainly use notebooks and loose leaf pieces of paper that you put into organized notebooks. Many of us now use computer programs to do that. You can just use file folders in a box that you bring along, like a tub or a small little research box. But the point is, figure out something that'll work for you so that when you need to look at a particular record or find out if you have a particular record, you'll know exactly where to go and where that information is kept in your material. It's up to you. There is no one perfect way to do it. It's just something that works for you. But once you record, now this is how I'm starting tonight. To just give you an idea, this was a starting point on a particular couple that was in the tree I was working on. And I have Edgar Allan Blair Jr., who is a doctor, an MD. I have a birth date somewhere in Tennessee. And we knew he died on the 2nd of February, 1978 in Galveston. His wife, Margaret, was born on that date, also in Tennessee, and she died in August of 1928 in Nashville. That was our starting point. We did not know the parents of either. We did not know where in Tennessee either was born, but it was a starting point. So you write it down, you put it in your records in some organized fashion, and then you can go from there. There was also a family story that there was a great grandfather somewhere back in the distant past who was called Scalpy Johnny because he was scalped by Indians and survived. And the story was that he was a Blair somewhere. Again, we didn't have much in the way of detail, except if it was Tennessee, we have the rough idea of when the Indians left Tennessee. So we would know it'd be before that, but we really don't have much to go on here. It's a family story, but you don't discount it. You write it down so you have it to refer to. When you are transcribing information from family records or from an official record, you transcribe it as you know it in your head or as you find it on the record. You don't change spellings. You don't change names. You don't change places. You transcribe it the way it is. You document your sources. This cannot be emphasized enough. Even if the source is your own memory, you still write down where you got that particular piece of information. So for every piece of information you record in your records, in your whatever program you're using or whatever notebook you're using or whatever, document where that information came from. It came from my own memory. It came from my conversation with Aunt Jen. It came from a birth certificate, a baptismal certificate. It came from the 1850 US Census. Whatever it may be, document where that information came from. And there's two reasons for this. One, so you could find it again if you need it. But two, it's for anyone else looking at your research, either a descendant in the future or someone who's trying to help you. When we know where that information comes from, it then makes it easier to find other information. And it tells me, if I'm looking at it, how good your research process has been. Anything that is not from an actual document, primary or secondary, we won't go into that, but birth, marriage, death, naturalization, etc. Anything else, census, family trees, family stories, even out of your own head, you need to prove with some official document, something that was created at the time of the event, because even our own memories can get foggy sometimes, and we remember it, but not quite right. And then, as I said, start to organize your files so that they're in some semblance of order when you sit down to work in them, or if somebody sits down to help you. The second part of this is once you've written down what you know, then you should be checking your hidden treasures. And in your handout, I gave you a one-page checklist. It is not exhaustive. It is not complete. It's just a checklist that I put together of various kinds of things you can find in the home that might and will give information about the family. And so you can use this to go, oh, I haven't looked for that, and I haven't looked for that. And yes, I've looked at that, and so you can check that off and so on. It's mostly just to nudge your own thinking process. And as I said, it is not exhaustive. There are other things you can be checking for, but this was just to get you started. Then the other thing you need to do is check with your relatives and friends. And I include friends because sometimes friends know more than the relatives do, because they're the ones that have conversations over tea, coffee, or whatever, or over the back fence. So again, in your handout, I've given you a short list of some suggested questions that you can use when you do the interview. The one thing to keep in mind is don't make the interview too long. Don't overwhelm who you're talking to, because they may get discouraged and stop helping. If you have to try to do an in-person interview, but if not, you can use email or telephone, whatever might work. If you use an email, print out the email response and add that to your records. And if you use the telephone, be sure you keep good notes on the telephone call, including the date of the telephone call and who it was to. So that's the interview others. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the real circle is online family trees. Many people today, this is what they think research is they go on and find a family tree at Ancestry or at FamilySearch or at MyHeritage or someplace, and that's the tree. So they copy it and put it up as their tree, and they're satisfied that they have done good research. But online family trees are only the opinion of the researcher. So unless the researcher has attached sources, going back to that source question that I comment earlier, you really don't know where any of that information comes. And when you look at a tree, you should be asking some of these kinds of questions. Are there sources attached to the facts? If there's a birth date and place, did that come from the census? Or did that come from an actual birth or baptismal certificate? Or maybe it came from a draft registration or a naturalization. Do the dates and places of the family seem logical? Do they make sense in terms of how old the mother was when she started having children? In terms of how old she was when her last child was born? I actually had someone come in once who, on the tree that they were working from, the father died 10 years before the baby was born, which is an impossibility. But that patron never had taken the time to look at, do the dates seem logical? Then when you look at the group of children as a family, are there gaps in the birth order? Before birth control, most families had children every 18 to 30 months. So is there a gap which might indicate that there was a baby that died? And then another thing to always consider, especially if you are living outside of urban areas, is are there others of the same name living in the same place at the same time? I was working in a family in Southern Illinois, and one of the names I was working on was Charles Baisden. And in the 1870 census, in the era of 1860s and 70s, there were 5 men named Charles Baisden, born within 5 years of each other, all of them born in that county and living in the same township. So how do I tell the difference between one Charles to the other Charles? You need to be very, very careful that there isn't someone else of the same name living where you're looking. So we can now go on and talk about the research circle. So step 1, or the first thing, is internet resources. This is still a good place to start because it has a lot of information on it. It certainly gives you, as you could say, the low-hanging fruit that then you work from to get to the higher hanging fruit. So looking at internet sources, I'm going to start with FamilySearch because it's free, it's accessible at home. You don't need to have a subscription, except for, well, there is no subscription. And I'm going to look at 3 parts of this, and it's only the 3 parts tonight that I really have time for. But the first one is the Research Wiki. So when you're on FamilySearch, you come up here to the search function, and when that opens up, you choose the wiki, which is right now the very last option in the search list. And then it goes to you type in a search window box, and in this case, I chose Tennessee. And the reason I want you to see the wiki is there's a lot of background information, but there's also this blue button that is down in the lower left corner of the first screen that comes up. And this is going to be there for every state, for every province of Canada, and for every country, and for some other areas of the world that are large. So you would click on this blue button that says Online Genealogy Records, and then you get this very long list of every database that's at FamilySearch and its partner websites. If it has a $sign, that means it's at a site that charges. So this one is at Ancestry. It even tells you that. If there's no $sign, it's a free website to use. This one's a FamilySearch. It tells you whether it's an index only or if they're index and images, and it's organized by type of record. So here are 3 births, here are a bunch of marriage records, and so on. It keeps going. This isn't the whole list, but it gives you in one place a very concise list of the majority of the databases that are online for that state or province or country. And you can print this and use it as a checklist to say, well, yeah, I've looked at that. Oh, here's something I haven't looked at, and so on. I always recommend looking at the wiki first, because then you get a good idea of what's available online to research for your family. Then once you've done that, the wiki also has articles about migration trails from one part of the United States to another, about various religions. They all have their own page with lists of internet databases and websites, and also occupations. So one is geographical, the states and the countries, but you also can get subject heading research articles in the wiki that will give you help researching that part of the family. How do you determine what religion it is? Where are those religious records kept, and so on. Then the second part of FamilySearch is the digital library. And it's also under search, but it's the next one up. It's called books. Instead of library, it is called books. And these are the libraries that are cooperatively putting this together. They are looking at and identifying the books in their collections that are in the public domain, no longer copyrighted, that are family histories, county histories, church histories, anything that can help in family history research with information about people. And it includes some genealogical society newsletters and journals as well. But this is a cooperative effort from all of these libraries around not only the United States, but you notice we've got Ontario down here. The Ontario Gen Society is working on that. And right now, the last number I saw, it's well over 500,000 volumes in this digital library. And this is the search. And it is a very simple search. You can put in here the name of a place. You can put in the name of a person. If you know the title of a book that you are looking for, you can enter the title of the book. It's whatever would fit down here. And then you get a list of everything that matches that hit. And then you can download the books, whatever book you may find. Most of them are available for download to your own computer and or a memory stick. And they're all in PDF format. And that means that once you downloaded them and then reopen them in Adobe, in Acrobat, you can search every word in that book. And you don't need an index, and you'll find a lot of material that way that normally are not in the indexes, or because the book was never indexed. You'll find a vast library of material here for wherever you're searching, anywhere in the United States and Canada. And there are also now, if you go back and look at this, we now have material coming out of Eastern Europe, Poland and Belarus and that area down here. There's now some books from this collection on the digital library. So it is starting to expand out of North America. And of course, with published family histories, that would be for worldwide families. Then we want to look at the historical records. Now, so far we've looked at the background material and the published helps that are out there. But what we really want to do is find an actual record: birth, marriage, death, naturalization, so forth. So on FamilySearch, the process you should be thinking and kind of organizing your thoughts is you first want to identify where an event took place. So you decide what event I want to research. What kind of record am I looking for? So where did it take place? And is it at a town, parish, or township, the county, state, or is it at the country level? You need to determine that, because that will tell you where to go look. Then once you determine where, then what kind of record gives me the answer to the question I'm trying to answer? What is the time frame that this event occurred? And then once you've done all of that, then you are ready to go look for the name. And so I just have the 4 keywords: where, what, when, who, in that order. Where did it take place? What kind of record is it? When did it take place? And then who am I looking for? So this is true all over Family Search's historical records section, and Ancestry also works somewhat in the same fashion. So it's called collections, but it's really the databases, and it's up here at the very top under search. And you go to records, and you're going to come to this page, and there's 3 options here, but we're going to look at this one down in the lower left. And what we want to do is browse the collections. So when you do that, you get a list of all 3,100 databases that Family Search currently has. This is as of today, on the website for you to search out information. And it is alphabetical by the location. So it starts with Alabama and works its way down. And it's usually first a state, and then if there is a county, it's going to come after the state, and you'll see that in a minute. Then up here, use where you can put the location. If you don't want to scroll through 3,100, just come up here and type in the location. So I typed in Illinois, and now I have 42 databases pertaining to Illinois records. And you can see what I was talking about here. Here's all the ones that are statewide. And now we go to Illinois Adams County, and then Illinois Chicago, and then other counties will be after this to finish out the 42. So it's state and then city or county after that. And then over here, you can see the number of records and the last time it was updated. If there's a little camera, that means there are images associated with this database. If there is no camera, such as here or here, that is just an index with no images, but certainly the index is going to give you a good clue as to where to go look for that actual original record. So that's how you do the historical records section, the databases on Family Search. But the historical records are also in the catalog. And the Family Search catalog, 30% of the records, this is rough, 30% of the records are indexed, but 70% are not. They're there, they're on the website, but they're not indexed. So you need to be able to access them some other way, and that's the catalog. So you go to catalog now, search catalog, and you get this screen, and it defaults that you're going to look for a place, which is usually the good place to start. Think about the 4 steps, the what, the where, what, when, who, and then you can go and find out. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to type the word Ontario. But as soon as I've typed that, I get a drop-down box. You can see here's my typing, Ontario. And now it is showing me every Ontario that is in the catalog for Family Search around the world. So here's the province. There is actually a city called Ontario, one in all of these states. Then there's a township called Ontario, and it goes on. So you would go through this, pick the one you want, which in this case is the province. That's the one I wanted. And then it will change this to say Canada, Ontario, automatically. You won't have to do it. You hit your search button, and now you have a list of all of the subjects of material on this website or in the Family History Library that are about the province of Ontario in Canada. And you can go through here, and if you toggle this little arrow, it will open up and it'll show me the 6 titles, the 6 items that are under buildings and dwellings. And you would go down and pick a category, look and see what's there. And once you find something, you click on it and it will look something like this. Now, this is the marriage registers for the province of Ontario. You can see various years up here. This is the full cataloging for your sourcing of where the information comes from. It also tells you down here that the district and county registers are available online, and all you have to do is click here to get to it. And if you scroll down, you will see an individual list of what's on each one of those folders. They're called digital folders or image group number now. They've changed that recently. And so originally this was a roll of film, and it does say this. And the original microfilm is still on the second floor film drawer. But it's been digitized. And so now it has this number. This is the film number here. This is the image group number. And it tells me now it's digitized. And the little magnifying glass tells me it's also indexed. So I can choose to look at the index for just this reel of film, or I can choose to go and open it up and go through it page by page. Now, because it's an index, that would be the faster way, but some of these do not have indexes. Remember, 70%. So what you would need to do is start looking through it as if you're looking through a microfilm in the old days on a reader and working page by page. Now, all of these cameras do not have a key. So because they are not locked, you can see all of these images at home. If there were a key above it, which means a locked image, you would have to be at the Family History Library, an affiliate public library, or at a family history center to see it. If the locked images cannot be seen at home, the unlocked without the key can. Now let's look at Ancestry. Ancestry's main screen, when you go in there, when you've logged in, looks like this. And it's giving you information about your own tree and your own research. But again, we want to look up here at the search function because we're searching for records here. So we want to choose search, and the screen will then give you this drop-down option. And yes, you could go right to a particular kind of record, but my suggestion is choose the all collections. And then when that is chosen, it gets a different screen entirely. First of all, you can start searching by name at this point, but remember the where, what, when, who order. So this is the who, this is the end. So if you scroll to the bottom of this screen, you will get a map. And it defaults to the United States with all of the states and territories. You notice there's Guam and American Samoa and so forth listed on the default map, but you can change it to any of these continental choices, and then you'll get the countries on that continent that FamilySearch has information included. So you pick your state. I'm going to stick with the United States. So let's pick Idaho. And when I click on Idaho, then it now shows me, now remember we're in Ancestry, it now shows me by category all of the databases Ancestry has for the state of Idaho. And it gives me the name and the count of the number of people that are in that database. Now, the whole database, this US World War II draft, this isn't just the state of Idaho. So there's 54 million men there for the entire United States. There's 14 million in this, but that's the entire United States. We're up here, these are specific to Idaho. This is for the entire United States again. So you need to keep a watch on where is listed at the very beginning. So this goes on much longer. I only gave you the top of the list, but this is where you can find out what's available on Ancestry. And I have found with my own research, if I start with this method, go to the map, pick where I'm looking for the record, and then start going through these databases, I find things much more efficiently and much faster than if I tried doing a name search on that opening screen. Just my recommendation based on my own research. Some other websites that you should go looking for depending on where your family lived. There are some country international websites that some of the country's governments have put up. Scotland's people. There's also a number of them for Ireland and for England, Wales, France, Germany, Sweden. There's many, many of these now that are government sponsored and have government records on them. They're worth looking out if you are doing international research. The states all have a state genealogical society. Many of the counties within the states and the provinces of Canada also have genealogical societies. That have created their own websites and have databases local to their area and accessible only on their website. Usually, very often you have to be a member to do it, but it's worth the membership. American Ancestors is the New England Historic Genealogical Society that is emphasizing New England and New York. And then we have state libraries or archives now have websites where they are digitizing some of the information in the state archives and putting them up on their websites. One I found the other day, rather interestingly, for the state of Illinois, they are actually creating a digital library of non-government records, such as I found my dad's picture in somebody else's photo scrapbook that was donated to the library in one of the small towns. And the archives have it and digitized it and put it up. And I went through it and there was my father. So you never know where you're going to find things. So look for your state libraries and archives. Look for the large genealogical societies, the state and county ones that are out there, as well as the international ones run by individual governments. Okay, now you get to this is all, you still haven't gone out of your house. You've put down what you know. You've worked on the internet, and that's taken you weeks and weeks and weeks. You've kept yourself organized and recorded. You've made note of your sources in your records. Now you're ready to go and look somewhere with feet on the ground. You need to decide where you need to go based upon where your family lived, where the research library might be, where there's a genealogical society, and so on. So with the feet on the ground, the first place I suggest is if you're on a research trip and you live in Montana, but you have decided to go to Missouri. And the first thing I would suggest is you find if there is a local family history center, because the centers have the local expertise and resources. They know research in their area. They also can give you personal one-on-one assistance, and they have access to all of those genealogical records at the 5 partner sites that are subscription sites that you would normally have to join yourself. You can get them for free at the Family History Centers in the portal. And the portal, these are the main ones. I did not list Ancestry, but there's 19th century British Library newspapers. There's the American Civil War. The New England Historical Genealogical, their site is called American Ancestors. Archive Digital is Swedish records. There's the British Newspaper Archive, which has got 20th century papers as well as older ones. There's a new one now that is it's called FamNet, and it's New Zealand records. And if you have British heritage and you think they never left the British Isles, check out this one for New Zealand. I have discovered many cousins now down in Australia and New Zealand that I discovered by accident because I just wanted to see what this particular website was like. Genealogy Bank is also newspapers primarily focusing on obituaries and death notices, and it is indexed on FamilySearch. Genealogy Bank is indexed on FamilySearch with transcription of the entry. Irish Ancestors is one of your beginning points for Irish research, particularly when you are talking 19th century. My Heritage is another site that has family trees on it, as well as a lot of international records. And then Newspaper Archive is for the United States. It's one of the 4 major newspaper sites, but it's the one that is available on the portal. Newspapers.com, plural newspapers, that one is part of Ancestry with a separate subscription. So Ancestry indexes it, and you'll get hits for newspapers.com, but you will not be able to see the actual newspaper edition if you do not have your own subscription. And that is not part of the portal. It is Newspaper Archive that is part of the portal. Now, if you're at the Family History Library, however, you can access newspapers.com. It's the only part of the system that has access to it. Now, the next thing is how do you find a family history center? So on the main family search page, you come up here to the little question mark, you click on that and you get this box, and you can type in a question up here. But what we really want to look at right now is how to find a family history center and a family search affiliate library. Remember, the affiliate libraries have access to the locked images as well as the Family History Center has access. So this is what I want to do. So you're going to click there and you get a map. Usually it's the map of the world. And you type in a location or a zip code up here. So I chose Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then you get this map, which is from Google Maps. I think either that or MapQuest, but it's an online map that they produce. And then if you look hard, you can see there are little colored circles. This colored circle, there's two of them, are family history centers. So there's one in Hales Corner. There's one, I'm not sure where that is because the city name is covered up, but you could click on it and then it would tell you exactly where the address is, phone number, and so on. This reddish circle means it's an affiliate library in Whitewater. So if I was living in Sullivan, Wisconsin, I could come over to the Family History Center here, or I could come down to the Whitewater Library. Those are my three closest to Sullivan. If you take a look, there's nothing else anywhere around this part of the state. The family history centers are usually in a church building of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so that kind of limits how many of them are going to be in a state or area. But the public libraries, if your public library is not an affiliate, you might want to encourage them to explore that, because it is not really a hard process as I understand it. And many libraries here in the Chicago area where I live have chosen to become affiliates. There is no limit on the number of libraries in an area. So it's a shame that only Whitewater has taken them up on that process. So you would only be able to go here all the way up to here. That's the only affiliate library plus the two centers. And this was for Milwaukee. This was my test for tonight. So that's how you find a family history center. And I'm going to go back through it one more time. On the main screen, you go up to the question mark in the upper right. You click that. This box opens up. You choose your first option, find a family history center. And then it comes to a map. And you enter your place name or zip code, and then the map will change to that part of the world. You can also, this isn't just for the United States and Canada. If you are going to overseas to your family's heritage location, you can do the same thing, look for a family history center. Because remember, I said that the family history centers have the local knowledge and expertise. They know what's possible, they know where the records are. So it's always good if there is a center where you're researching on your trip to go visit there at the earliest part of your trip so you can get their advice on doing the research. So this is how that process works to find one. Now let's talk about libraries and archives in general. The local public library is always a good place to start to look for the subscription websites that are not available on the portal or have better hours. I will admit that most of the family history centers have limited hours and the public libraries have open much longer. So many people choose the public libraries. So check with your public library, whichever one you have access to, for what websites do they subscribe to that their patrons can access. The affiliate libraries, if it is an affiliate library, remember also has access to the restricted digital records. The second thing to think about is if you're in an urban area particularly, just one moment, please. You want to look at the local public libraries, which have large collections of local and family history. Several of them here near where I live have a room devoted entirely to local and family history collections and have dedicated librarians that work in that part of the collection. So if you're in an urban area, then you would want to check on that. And usually the genealogical societies of the area know which libraries those are. And when you're looking at large national collection type libraries, that is libraries that collect for the broader United States, these are the ones that I would suggest. It is certainly not a limited, this is not complete, but the Family History Library certainly in Salt Lake City would be at the top of the list. And the BYU Family History Library comes close right behind it. The second, maybe second after that to me is the Allen County Public Library. That is in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It has almost the entire second floor is devoted to just family history and genealogy. They have a staff that is dedicated to that, volunteers that's dedicated to it. It is a wonderful place to go research. And they have material for the entire United States with a special emphasis, I feel, east of the Mississippi River. Then we have the Midwest Genealogy Center down in Independence, Missouri. Again, another one that has a very strong collection focused on the Midwest section of the country. The Wisconsin State Historical Society Library is in Madison, Wisconsin, and don't let the name confuse you. It has been collecting the history of United States and Canada since 1846. It has not published any more works. I didn't know quite how to say that. Books that were published in the 19th century, county histories, family histories, church histories, pamphlets that individual churches and schools have published on their 25th anniversary, their 50th anniversary, and so on. The library is huge, extensive. You can spend days there. And it's almost, to my mind, a tie with Allen County as to which one is the best one to go to, especially for those of us living in the Midwest, or if you're planning to make a trip and you might want to stop at one or the other. So even though it's part of the Wisconsin State Historical Society, it is not just for Wisconsin. Then the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, very good for colonial records out of Pennsylvania and the early parts of the United States. And then I've talked about the American Ancestors Research Center in Boston. The Historical Society of Pennsylvania is in Philadelphia. So these are the ones I would suggest you start at. It is not exhaustive. Look around your part of the country, ask the genealogical societies what libraries they would recommend for where you're researching. Then you eventually need to get to the hometown. Walking the pavement, get the feel for what the town looks like. Get the feel for where the schools are, the churches. Yes, it's going to have changed. Yes, the home where your family grew up for 3 generations has been torn down and is now some manufacturing plant. But still get a sense of where it was. And then you need to get ready for your research. Now, I've just thrown a couple of ideas out here. These would be the major places to go look and to focus a research trip around. Now, when I say a research trip, when you're going to go to the hometown, you can't do it in half a day. You really can't do it in a day unless that's all you're going to be able to do. Try to do a 2 to 3 day minimum trip to any hometown location so that you have time to go to all of these different places and you have time to get into their resources, to chat with the people that are local, to follow up the leads. If you are with your family, maybe there's some kind of an amusement park nearby, or maybe your spouse likes to golf and there's a golf course they can go spend time on, but try to organize it so that you have at least 2 to 3 days to get into these places and do your research. And I understand that's not always possible, but it's what I would recommend. So this is your public library, a picture. This is a family history center as a reminder. The local genealogical society, I don't know about the rest of the country, but here in Illinois, many of the smaller county ones in Illinois have now opened up their own facilities in storefronts in the main part of town. The courthouse, certainly. But one thing to check on the courthouse, always call ahead of time and ask them where the records are that you're looking for. Are they in the original courthouse, or have they been moved off-site to an archives? Many of these very beautiful and architecturally gorgeous courthouses of the 19th century have run out of space. They don't want to tear them down. They don't want to replace them. So they either turn them into the archive, or they build a separate building in another part of town, a modern building, where they then take all their old records and put it in the archives. And you're looking for a tax list from the 1885 era, and you find out, well, it's not here. Call ahead and find that out. And then they'll tell you, well, that's going to be over at the archives, so you need to go to the archives building, not here. That's not going to be true for everyone, but certainly every courthouse, you should call them or check their website ahead of time when you're still planning your trip. And then churches and churchyards, very much part of any trip. And then if you're going to be near a state capitol, the state archives in every state capitol, usually quite extensive, and sometimes they're in more than one building. So again, you would need to check website or call ahead. So that's what I would suggest for what I call feet on the ground. As you move along, as you work your way down that list, as you do your travels, as you go from one place to another, keep up your ancestral charts and your family group sheets. Keep your research log going, keep marking your sources. Be sure you have done all of that and you're keeping it current. I made a mistake very early on when I was just starting this, that I would go on a research trip, spend 3 days at the Wisconsin State Historical Society, for instance, take a ton of notes, print off a bunch of paper, a ream of paper on the copier, and not mark it down, come home, and then try to make sense of it. Because I look at something and I go, well, who on this page is the person I was looking for? Because I didn't make note. So be sure you're doing that as you go along. It will, A, make your research easier, but B, it's going to be amazing what you can forget when you do a lot. And then you look at it later, a week or 2 weeks later or something like that. And that's also the reason for the research log. So you can see what you've done, but also where you've looked, where you didn't find anything. So you don't repeat that search again. And don't discount the stories. Now, if you remember, there was the story about Scalpy Johnny being scalped by Indians and surviving. Now, how do you go about proving something like that? Well, if it's later in the 19th century or in the 20th century, I would go to newspapers. But this is likely not to be in that time frame because we're talking about Indians. So one of my go-to sites for something like this is to Google it. So I went to Google and just entered Scalpy Johnny. That's all I entered. And up came this reference to an article in the Blair Family Magazine from 1998 on page 26. This is my sourcing. Remember, you should always keep track of that. And it's written by Margaret Vance Webb. She's member 015 in the Blair Family Organization. And here's this story about John Calhoun Blair working outside the fort near Fort Nashboro in the Cumberland River area, and how they only could work in the daylight because of the continuous Indian raids and so on and so forth. Tells us who his wife is. And then we come down here and she tells the story In 1789, he's out working in his fields, and then darkness comes along, and the Indians find Johnny, and then it talks about how he was wounded, fell on his face. The sting of the hunting knife cut his scalp off, and he was stomped on the back, left for dead. He recovered and made his way to the Andrew Carnahan home. So here is the story actually written out that gives some proof to it. It's not 100% proof, because who would have documented this in some form of an official document? But here's the interesting part to me, other than I found the story. John Calhoun Blair, this happened in 1789. He lived for another 64 years until the 1850s, even though he did not have his hair. His scalp was gone, and there was some kind of growth over the bones, but you could tell that the scalp had been taken off at some point in his life. So don't discount those stories. Now, they may or may not be totally true. They may be combining more than one story, but don't discount them, because there are clues in them if you follow through on it. And then back to the beginning, repeat, repeat, repeat. That's why it's not a circle, it's a squiggly line, because you keep going back and forth, back and forth. You go to the library one day, and that leads you back to a cemetery the next day. And then you find a stone you didn't know was there, so that takes you back to the courthouse, and the courthouse takes you back to the library. And then you go to the internet because you want to find them on the census, and so forth and so forth and so forth. My best description of that is a circle, but it's anything but. It's really just a big squiggly line that just kind of wanders all over. So to give you an idea of how successful this can be, this is what I knew from the beginning. Edgar Allan Blair Jr., this is what I knew. And here is his pedigree chart today. He's right here, of course, but I've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, almost all of 5 generations back. And a few of these even go back further. Documented with original documents, not necessarily a birth, marriage, death. It could be a tax list. It could be a will. It could be a probate, but something that does prove all of this information. And then for his wife, Margaret, this is what I knew to start with. And again, I'm also 5 generations back for her, and over half of her family lines, with a few more going further back. I do have some work to do here and down here. This is colonial America, this column right here. So if you've done any work in pre-revolution, you know how difficult that can be. But here's Margaret out 5 generations, just by following that process that I just demonstrated to you. So you can do it, and good luck with it. So I'm going to stop share to go back to the beginning. And there is one in the queue in the chat. So let's see what that is. Oh, that's the handout. So now Q&A. There was a handout, thank you. Where do librarians go to ask to be part of the location on the map? As far as I know, you contact FamilySearch Direct. There is a phone number on the Contact Us page, and you would call there, and you can look it up in the phone book too. Call the Family History Library if you can't find another phone number, and then they'll direct you to the office that handles the appointment of affiliate libraries. I understand it's really not a difficult process, and it just involves doing some paperwork, as I understand it. Anything anybody wants me to go back to or to expound on? I didn't put it in my presentation because I didn't think I'd have time, but the other thing I would include is Facebook. If you don't have a Facebook account because you've heard too many stories about getting spam and all of that and inappropriate material, you can control what you get on Facebook by being very careful as to who you friend and who you follow. And I use it extensively for family history. I follow many genealogical groups. I also follow FamilySearch because FamilySearch has FamilySearch research communities for around the world. And because of that, I have connected to cousins that literally I did not know existed. And some of them have helped me with some brick wall clues and broke down the brick walls for me. So I suggest you add to this internet section Facebook. Be careful. Yes, you don't want to friend everybody. Choose who you want to friend. I would start with the genealogical societies and the family search communities and then go from there. But I cannot emphasize how helpful they have been in either answering a question, breaking down a brick wall. They help each other. Everybody in those groups help each other. I've seen people that they found a certificate and it's in Latin and they can't read Latin. So they post it to the Facebook group and 7 people translate it for them. And that is true for Polish and German and other languages as well. Sometimes it's a matter of, here's a document and I can read every word except this one word. Can anybody else figure it out? And somebody does figure it out. So I cannot say how much I enjoy using Facebook and how helpful it's been for me. And I should have included it, but I didn't think I'd have the time. So add it to the internet section. Can I go to the books again? Yes, we can do that very quickly. So we'll do it this way. So on the digital library, you go to your search function. It's this almost at the bottom. It's called books. You click there and then your search screen is just this. It's just one box. You can put in the place name. You can put in the name of a person. You can combine a place and a person's name. If you know the actual name of a book, you can put that in there. If you know, you can also just put genealogy and a county name, the word genealogy, just anything that you might, that's going to help you locate books in the area you want. Then you hit search and then it will show you all of the books in the library that have those words in their titles. It will be a very, very long list, but the ones at the top are the ones that are the most likely the ones you're looking for. If I'm putting in a county name, I'll say something like Ontario County, California, so that it knows to look in California books and not in Ontario and so on. If I'm looking for a family history, I'll put in the surname of the family, such as Blair, and then a location where they lived, usually as far back as I have. So Blair family, Guilford County. So, and then that's in North Carolina. But I would just put Blair family and the location, Guilford County, and then search. And then usually up pops about 3 or 4 family histories about the Blair family that came out of Guilford County, North Carolina. So you just have to play around with the words a bit because it doesn't give you an advanced search option. It's just this box. And then once you get into it, you can start narrowing it down. But the first box is just this. And then once you've gotten into it, you open it up and you can download. There's a little download symbol. You can download it and save it. And then you've got it on your computer or your thumb drive to keep and to use. Because these are not copyrighted material, they're in the public domain, so anyone can have a copy and anyone can use them. And I think, yep, that was the last of it. And I hope that answered the question for the person that wanted me to go back to it. It's amazing how much international is getting out there right now. The countries are beginning to understand that family history genealogy is a big business and that their archives and government centers are being swamped, especially before pandemic, but starting to come up again after. They're just, people are coming in all summer long and sometimes even before and after that with questions about, I need to find my grandfather's death certificate. And they're keeping their staff so busy that the normal use of that kind of a facility is being pushed to the back. So a lot of the governments have decided, well, let's start putting it online and save us having to have staff to do it. Another thank you. So you will find that growing by the week. And if you look at that list from FamilySearch from the wiki, remember the little button down in the bottom left corner. If you use that, check it every week, because there'll be new databases added every week. Ancestry certainly adds at least once a month. MyHeritage, I just saw an announcement today that they just made a major download of new records. So it's growing every week, every month, but it still is nowhere near everything that's available. You are still going to need to do on-site research somewhere to get the rest of the material. Certainly you can hire a professional genealogist to do it for you, but I find that if I'm going to spend the money, I'd rather spend it on my own trip and enjoy the trip myself. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for participating tonight, and have fun with your research.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you will join us for our next webinar, which is on Thursday, September 22nd, with Laura Leffler. She will be giving a presentation entitled Best Record Types to Track Down Your Southern Ancestors. A recording of this webinar will be made available next week. You can view that on our YouTube channel or on our website. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email us at fhl_webinars@byu.edu or follow Facebook and Twitter. Thank you and have a wonderful week.